Welcome to Cheap Controls. We make videos on things that we struggled with, hoping to help you so you don't. Consider subscribing and hitting that bell. This is going to be a little change from my normal videos. I'm going to change the Cheap Controls website to a Laravel 8 site. And I thought since I'm going to be doing it, I might as well keep track of it in video format and then upload it. Because there are some things I've run across that I want to remember and I want to be able to go back and look at. So I'm doing this more for me than anyone else, but I'm hoping that someone finds this interesting. Otherwise you can just skip, and I'm still going to be coming out with the other videos, so this will just be in addition to. Now the installation of the software, I used this Laravel from scratch from Brad Traversy. It's a YouTube series, it's free. I'm not going to go into that, but I downloaded Composer and some other things, Git and Bash, based upon his video. But this was for version 5 or something. It's a lot older version. And so when I went to start making this in 8, I found out that there were some things different. So the notes that I took while I was watching this series didn't really work out. I want to document what I did for 8 so that way I can go back, because I'm also going to use this for the network monitoring tool. So as I build the one, it'll be nice to have some notes to refer back to, or even a video. So if you did install the software and follow his setup, I'm going to use Visual Code just like he did in there. I've used Visual Code for some other things, and it just works nicely, so I'm going to keep using it. I'm going to start a new terminal. And then you have to navigate to the location where you want this to be. And I use XAMPP. And then you go to the htdocs. And I kind of like it because if you followed along, you can use some of the Unix commands, so ls instead of dir. And in this folder, I'm going to just call it CC test. I've already started the new website, but I want to document some of the issues that I ran across as I was building it. So just the command is Laravel, new, and then the name you want it to be. That helps if you spell it correctly. Now I'll speed this part up. Okay, so there, it's all complete. The nice thing that I really like about Laravel is that it creates a folder structure and it names it CC test, and then everything is within this folder structure. So if you make a big mistake or you do something wrong, it's not installed throughout your PC. You can just right click and delete that and start all over, and it's like it was never there. Of course, if you do delete it, it's like it was never there and everything's gone and you have to start over. So it's good and bad with that. And the other thing that's nice about Laravel is it comes set up with a home page. It's ready to go, so you can see if it's working or not right away. So if I go to my local host, and then I just put in CC test, it shows you your folder structure here. Now the stuff that we'll be working with is in the public folder. And this would be the home page right here. So instead of going to CC test, you would go to CC test/public. Now if you want to speed this up a little bit, I'm going to show you a couple of files you can do, or some changes you can do. Now this is also in the Traversy Media video, but it's changed now. The browsers are more secure, so you can't use some of the dot whatever you want to use. Like what I found is best to just use .test. And the first thing we'll do is we'll edit the host file. So you just start Notepad, but you have to run it as administrator. Otherwise the changes won't be saved. And the directory is this Windows System32 drivers/etc. And then you have to go down here and say all files, and then it's this host file right here. And you can see I already have Cheap Controls built, but we're going to add this CC test in here. So 127. And what we're doing is we're pointing these words, CC, when you type it into the browser, and we're just directing it to this IP address of 127.0.0.1, which is the local host on the PC. So that just sends it back to that. And then we have to go into the virtual host to then direct it to the right folder. So right now it would just be going to the local house. I'll save this and show you what I mean. So if I go up here and type in cctest.test, hit enter, it just takes us to the localhost page, this 127. This is the main interface for Apache. It doesn't know to go to the file folder. And so we'll go to that next. If you're going to do that, you have to go to Windows, XAMPP, Apache, config, and extra, and find this httpd-vhost.config. And I'm going to edit this in code. And you can see I have some other hosts already configured. Just copy this. And you just change it in here to go to cctest/public whenever we type in cctest.test. So if you delete this and hit restart, it should work. But you can see that it doesn't, and that's because that vhost file is cached. So we have to restart the XAMPP or your Apache server. And that's another one. You should do this as administrator. So we'll just stop it. And then we'll start it. Now we should be able to close this, and now delete this dashboard because it's not going to know what test/dashboard is. And now we go back to this. So now this is our starting page for Laravel. Now in the code, we're going to open that folder. And it created all of this stuff when it made that, when we ran that Laravel new CC test. It created all this for us. And for me, it was a little overwhelming at first. The main things you want to focus on are the public, the resources, and the routes. Those are the three we're going to start with, and then we'll do a little bit with this app later. But for right now, the resources and the views, this is that page, this welcome.blade.php. That's the page that we're starting. So if I click on this, and it created this automatically just as kind of a test. And so what we can do in the body, we can put anything we want in here. We're just going to modify this and put out cheap controls as an H1. And if I go back to the browser and restart or refresh, there it is. There's cheap controls. So you can edit this any way you want. But for me, I just want to bring my cheap controls over, and I want to get a quick start on this. So we're going to go into this view, and we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call it homepage. And it's blank. And I've already messed up because it needs to have the whole thing. So you use homepage. So rename homepage.blade.php. You don't really need the blade, but when you get into Laravel a little bit more, you can see down here it has these ifs, so you can put some code within the HTML. And I believe that that blade is what makes that work. So I've just gotten in the habit of making it, whatever page I make it, I just make it homepage.blade.php. And then we're just going to copy the code over. And so we'll just open. So in here, I've got my cheap controls pre-Laravel. And I can click on that, and then this has the old site. So my index right here, I'm going to open it in code. And this is my old site right here. So I'm going to copy the whole thing. And I'm going to paste it in here. And this is the resources, and this is the three that I said we have to focus on are the resources and then the routes and the public. So we're going to go to the routes next. And these three up here I haven't gotten into yet. All we care about is the web.php. And the web.php is what directs everything around. If I open that, all there is one route. So when we go to cctest.test, it takes this view. It returns the view welcome. And under views, it's this welcome. So all we have to do is change the name to homepage. Save it. And then when we go back and reload it, it's going to open this file instead of this file. And you can see. Of course, none of our CSS and none of that's in there, but the site's up and working. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring over our style sheets. And this is in the old one, the pre-Laravel. And in the style sheets, which I better go to the code so I get the right style sheets. Up in the top here, these are our style sheets that we use for the home page. And I've got a head foot one and an index.css. So I have to copy those two over and put them in this public. So anything in the public here is what's seen when you reload the site. So I'll also have to create a folder in here because if you notice on the links here, it's css/headfoot.css. So we need to add a folder called CSS. And now when we go here, we should be able to copy those over. So we need the head foot. And we'll copy both of these. And we're going to go back to the htdocs. We're going to go to cctest, public, CSS, and we're going to paste it in here. And now when we go back to here, it should see those CSS files. There's a chance we may need to do a hard reload, but nope, it worked. So now we're looking pretty good here. I'm not sure where it's getting the images from because I haven't copied those over yet. I'm going to switch this to development mode and do a hard reload. And there you can see they're gone. I'm not sure why those were appearing in there unless they were cached from me opening the regular site. So now we just need to do the same thing. And before, I went in here and I created this CSS folder, but you can also just drag it over. So if we go back to the pre-Laravel site and grab our images, we can copy the whole thing. Go back to cctest, public, and now we can paste it in. Now when we go back to it, if we reload it, the images may pop up or I may have to do a hard reload. Nope, there we go. So now we have the base website converted over to Laravel, and we need to do some massive editing at this point, but at least it's starting to look well. And it was pretty easy to get this set up and moved over. I'm hoping that the Laravel will make a lot of things easier because I want to have a login page. I want to be able to edit it on this site if I'm an administrator, things like that, and I'm hoping that Laravel will make that easier. Now over in our routes, this web.php, this sends our request, which is a GET request, directly to this view. But there are times where you may want to send multiple requests to the same view or alter the view a little bit based upon how you're getting to that view. So there's something called a controller, and that's up here in this app, HTTP, and this controllers area. It comes with this built-in one, and every controller you create extends from that controller. We're going to use the terminal and we're going to create a controller. When you open it, it's kind of nice when you have the folder open because it opens it up in that folder. And the Laravel has a built-in artisan tool here. And what it can do is it can make the controllers for you. And all it does is it creates a folder or a file up here with some text already in it. And that makes it easy so you don't do any typos or anything. But there's nothing to stop you from just creating the controller. Like I'm calling it main pages controller, and it's going to call it main pages controller.php. The other thing is your controllers are mainly plural. So I have main pages controller, not main page controller. I'm going to use this controller possibly to do some other pages on here. So it's PHP artisan make controller and then the name of the controller. And you'll see when I hit enter, it's going to create the file up here. And see now this is up here. And then it just put these lines of code in here. If I copied and pasted this, I could just change the name here and it would be a different controller. The other thing is it only made that one file. So I could go up here, right click, delete this, and it's gone. But then I could just run the command again. And there it is. And it's the same. So if you feel like you got into something and you typed in a bunch of stuff, you didn't know what you typed in and you don't know and you just want to start over, just delete it and recreate it. Works pretty slick. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use this web.php and we're going to call this controller. And when we call this controller, we're going to want it to do something. So I'm going to paste this code, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to have it do the same thing it did. We're going to call it function homepage. In this case, we're not going to use this yet, but hopefully down the road you'll see what that's used for. And then we're just going to return this view homepage, just like on the web. Return view homepage. We're going to go from the web.php up to this pages controller, and then it's going to call the homepage.blade.php. What I liked about this is that this homepage, we don't have to put .blade.php. It knows to go to this views folder and just get the file named homepage. So now we have to alter this. So I'm going to comment this for now. And we're going to delete everything down to that. So now whenever we get a GET request to the home page, we're going to have it redirected up to this main pages controller. And you do that by simply putting it in there. We're going to app http controllers main page controller.php. So it's app http controllers main pages controller. Now, this at homepage, if I go to the controller, that's this function. So it knows to call this function. I could add a second function in here, and just by changing that at, it will go to the different function within here. So I could change this view to be a second page. So now when I restart this, you shouldn't notice any change. And you can see that nothing has changed. But just to prove that we are going to this main pages controller, instead of returning a view, we could just return some HTML. So I put this text in here, return. This was inserted before the home page view. Let's put some H1 tags around it so that it's big, because it will interpret this as HTML. And now we'll go back and we'll reload. And it only does the first return. Once it sees the first return, it does it, and then it ends at that point. I'm going to comment this out. Go back, reload this, make sure we're still on the main page. So far, this is what I've done to get my page up and working. Now, I have gone a little bit further, and I'm going to make some other videos as I go through this process. This isn't going to be a full force tutorial on Laravel 8. It's just going to be somebody that doesn't know a whole lot about it, building a website, putting it up here, and maybe showing some people how to do things a little bit differently. Like when we go to authenticate, if you look at the documentation for Laravel 8, it says you have to use a couple of different things called Jetstream or a choice between that and something else. And I found a way to do it without using any of that, just to use the base Laravel functionality. And we'll get into that as we work through this. So I hope that people find this interesting. If nothing else, you'll see the back end of the Cheap Controls website. Well, that's about it for this video. If you like what you saw, consider giving me a thumbs up, and also consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.